You are listening to the default audio track, which includes instructional narrative. To turn off this audio track and listen to just music, simply press the audio button on your DVD remote. To turn off the music, press the audio button once again to hear just the sounds of the ride. Welcome everybody to the Tour de Steamboat. This is the fifth and final stage as we're heading back to the town of Steamboat. It's about a 30-mile ride, an hour and 45 minutes with a rest stop at about an hour into this ride. So if you want to pause and get off, get a drink or something at the rest stop, that's a good place to do it. Here with a friend and guest today. His name is Mike Meese. He is a beginning cyclist, lives here in Denver, Colorado. Has been riding for about 2 years, I guess. Right, Mike? Yes, no?
Yeah, just about it. Actually, going on 2 years, just starting my second year of riding.
And we're just we'll talk about some training techniques and tips again. And what I'd like Mike to do is basically ask some questions if he's got any about planning for long distance century ride, and or whatever else that comes to mind. Just to have a little bit of fun. This is a pretty long video, so might be nice to kind of break up the monotony of constantly talking about how to climb your bike and talk a little bit about cycling or life, work. Real quickly, I would like to introduce the display again. For those of you who have been watching this is all old news, but there's two graphs on the bottom. And the top graph is our hill profile. You can see that it's mostly downhill for the next 30 miles. And then there's a little climb at about an hour into the ride. The lower graph is our effort level profile. And the red zones are at about 86% of max as our maximum heart rate for the segment. We'll be averaging in the low 80s. So a nice anaerobic workout with lots of intervals. You can see how it looks a little jagged like a knife blade. And this is because we actually find some help along this ride, and we get a guy, we start taking turns pulling, and each one of those spikes is us up front. And each dip is us drafting in the back, so kind of interesting. So right now we're spinning at a cadence of about 80 RPM. and our heart rate is in the low 70s. So follow the gear ratio on the right there. It's pretty accurate. The cadence is all over the place, so that might be difficult to stick with the cadence, or that cadence value isn't real good on this one just because of all the changes in coasting and pedaling, with especially with having somebody up front. So anyway, just to give you a heads up on that. So Mike, what do you do out here in Colorado?
Well, I work for Hewlett Packard out at the Miller Coors site, supporting a computer system called SAP. Been doing that now for about 13 years.
Cool. And I guess, how'd you get into cycling? How'd you get into the sport?
Well, actually, I started really mountain biking, because I originally never thought a road bike would be able to hold me, because I'm not a small guy.
Mike's a big guy.
Which I'm hoping road bike will help make me a little bit smaller. Because I started off mountain biking and I really enjoy it, and I still do it now and then, but crashing down the mountain started to hurt more, so I figured if I can do road biking, a little bit longer rides, hopefully less crashing, less pain. For me, cycling is really one of the only options I have for exercising, because, well, I've had 5 knee surgeries on my left leg from wrestling and football in high school, and running isn't an option, so cycling is just an enjoyable way for me to get some exercise.
That's awesome. Yeah, Mike, and you did, I think you did your first long distance ride at the Elephant Rock, what, last year?
Yeah, I did the metric century. I was tempted to do the full century, but it was my first ride, and I was a little intimidated, actually.
It is a little spooky.
So I decided I'd do the metric, because I felt that I could do that easily, because I had, been riding, close to that distance just on a regular basis around town. So it was a lot of fun. I can see what they talk about the wind at the Elephant Rock.
Did you, when you were finished, did you feel like you might have been able to do the full century?
Actually, yeah. When I got done, I got done a lot faster than I thought I was. I actually forget my time now, but I did it relatively quick. And when I felt like I could have probably done the century, so that's my goal this year. Is I want to do not only E-Rock full century, I want to do some other rides and just do a lot more organized riding this summer.
Yeah, there's one in Iowa you wanted to do.
Yeah, the Ragbri right across Iowa. That's one it's sort of my goal this year, if I can get a couple other people to do it with me. That's a 6-day ride, Sunday to Saturday. Ride averages about 70 miles a day. But from what I understand, Iowa's not flat, because that's where my grandparents are from, so there's a lot of rollers. But it's supposed to be a real fun time, a way to get into distance riding. And they say you don't have to be a real serious cyclist. So, but they also say you need to be able to, you should have at least 1,000 miles on your bike before you get to the Elephant Rock. To the Ragbri.
Right. Well, Denver's a good place to train for that. The similar topography, and put in a lot of base mile training. Base miles are basically those miles that, well, try to back up here. if you're training for an event like the one in Iowa, and you know the landscape, and you know the distance, then it's a good idea, or for training for base miles, is basically doing the training that best emulates the ride that you're training for. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So probably in preparing for that ride, be a good idea to do at least, I'd say, 5 days straight at 30 to 50 miles per day.
Okay.
And then also ride the same type of topography, you know, here in the Front Range. Denver would probably be pretty appropriate.
Yeah, just some of the rides that I've gone on around. I have a really nice loop that goes from my house up in Arvada up to Erie, and then it loops around back into Boulder and then back, and that's about depending on which way I turn, I can make it into about a 40-mile loop.
Right.
And I like to ride that.
You can see here on the video, oh, here's our friend, actually. We're cruising along pretty good, 25 miles an hour. I slowed down a little bit when I saw him behind me. I was like, oh, thank God. So I get to take a break, let this guy pull a little bit.
Now, pulling, you talked about that, and you've tried to tell me that before. It can be intimidating.
You mean being up front?
Oh no, being behind.
Oh, that's harder.
Because especially for somebody new like me that may not have complete bike control yet.
Okay.
I mean, what are your suggestions on like what we're doing right now?
Well,
getting up on this guy's wheel, and is there any etiquette?
Yes. Great question, Mike. Thank you. Start out with what you said. Your comfort on the bike. You should only follow somebody as close as you feel comfortable following. The pros will ride about 6 inches off the back wheel. In other words, their front wheel is 6 inches behind the guy in front of them, the back wheel. And there's two components that you're looking at. One is your own ability, and second is the ability of the rider in front of you to ride a straight line and to maintain even pace. This guy we don't know, so to have no clue what he's capable of, if he's squirrely or if he's a good, solid, consistent rider. So we start out with a 2 to 3 foot gap. You know, I've seen guys, I've been drafting, come to a hill, come out of the saddle, and they slow down 5 miles an hour, and then all of a sudden, you know, I'm like touching wheels with them. Or they might be squirrely, avoiding potholes and not looking forward enough to point those potholes out, and they'll just make an abrupt move left or right to avoid the road obstruction, leaving you either in the hole yourself or getting hit by the bike. So, you know, always, if you don't know the person in front of you, be conservative and play it safe, and give a little distance. And then, of course, you know, if you're pulling and you're wobbly or wiggly or whatever, you're up front. You know, it's really up to the guy behind you to make a determination as to whether or not you're safe to draft, or at what distance. Actually, on stage 2 of this ride, there is a guy pulling, and he didn't point anything out. He didn't point out any debris, and he just kept moving his bike around it. And there was about, you know, 6 people behind him, and nothing got pointed out. And as a result, I was like hitting all that stuff that he was trying to avoid. And I got sick of it, and I just passed him up. So, you know,
that's where, you know, for me, I'd letting go of a handlebar to point something out. I mean, the more I'm on the bike, the more comfortable I'm getting. But that'd be something I need to work on.
Well, you know, that comes with experience and time. Control of your bike handling. And it just, you know, also being comfortable on your bike and being fit to your bike will help your handling a lot. So if you're uncomfortable, you know, the chances are you're going to be a little more squirrely. So just being relaxed and comfortable is a real important part. But yeah, you know, if you're in a group and you've been riding with them for a while, and you know who to trust and who not to trust, then you know, you can take some more risks and follow them up a little bit closer and save some energy.
Okay, I'll have to try that. Because for the E-Rock, I pretty much rode by myself. I mean, I get into groups, but
right,
there wasn't really any quote-unquote drafting. I think a couple people drafted off me because
you're a big guy.
I'm a pretty big windbreak.
Yeah, I drafted off you.
So I didn't really draft off anybody. I did get in one group, but I just wasn't sure what the etiquette was. So I just rode.
Take a notice here, everybody, that each time we get behind this guy, let's take off 2 clicks of resistance and make it easier for ourselves. And then now that we're passing him, let's add 2 clicks. Or if you're on a spin bike, about a half turn each time. If you're in front, add about a half turn to a turn of resistance. Get your heart rate up. And then you see this guy come passing us up. We're going to take off a little resistance and relax our spin. So noticing the gear guide, actually shift down 1 here. Not as much because now we're hitting a hill and now we're back up. And then we're going to actually add another click and get that resistance up. And our heart rate's going to start shooting up here as we're coming up over this little hill. Keeping the cadence up around 80, 85. Heart rate should be getting into the mid 80s.
No.
Yeah.
For a new rider, you're talking about gearing and stuff here. What kind of advice do you have for somebody like me who was new to this? And right now, I ride whatever feels comfortable, which may not be the correct gear. Sometimes I feel I'm going out and I'm in too strong of a gear and I burn my legs out. Other times I feel like I'm going too easy and spinning without making up any distance. And I know that's a question my wife always asks me, and I can't answer her that question.
Well, you know, spinning is a big component to cycling. Take off a little resistance here. And if you want to preserve your knees and you want to preserve your strength, you'll use a higher or a lower gear with less resistance and try and keep your cadence at around 80 to 100 RPM for the bulk of any ride. The only time you should drop down less than 80 is if the hill is just too steep for your gearing and your legs, and you're trying to control your heart rate, for example. You don't want to let it get too high. So you shift into your lowest chain ring or whatever, and then grind up the hill. Watch your efforts and make sure you don't go too far into the red, and whatever cadence you're hammering out at the time is pretty much what you're going to be limited to, just because as the hill gets steeper, sometimes you just can't control how fast your legs are going. That's my advice, keeping the cadence higher, better for your knees. And also you won't burn up your leg strength so quickly.
Yeah, because I find that on long rides, especially the first couple I did, I was afraid to burn the legs, and I kept it too low.
Your cadence was too low?
And then I went to the other extreme on the next ride, and it's taken a while to get to where I feel comfortable, you know, riding 50 miles.
Right. Well, you know, there's nobody's the same. We're at a 10 or a 8 out of 10 on resistance here. So we're feeling this little hill, still keeping the cadence up, but we're watching our heart rate climb as we're trying to keep our speed up over this little hill. Drop it down one. Some people are just born mashers, where they'll be using lower cadences, and I see that a lot, especially on time trials. Some people use a really big gear, and they're fast. So, you know, some people like Lance like to spin it up around 115 RPM on a time trial. And so there's a you know, a preference factor too. Where's your body performing best at? Where do you feel most comfortable? So I can't say that for everybody. Everybody should be doing the same cadences, but as a rule of thumb, a higher cadence is better in the long run, especially for long distance rides, where you need to save your leg strength for the entire ride. We're behind, so we can take off some resistance and then put it right back on again.
And then on your long rides, you need energy. I mean, you can't eat a huge breakfast and go out and expect it to last for the whole ride. So what do you do on your ride? Like for me on the Elephant Rock, I stopped at every rest area, but that adds time to your ride.
Now it's important to note that a Century ride is not a competitive event, and so use the rest stops and take a break and refuel. I mean, I use every one. I think recovery, you know, is as important as the actual workout. So you need to let your muscles recover and then also get some food. As far as preparation before the ride, as far as nutrition goes, the day before the event, I don't do anything real special with my diet. But I do plan it. In other words, what I need to do is make sure that I'm eating a meal that I'm comfortable with and eating in quantities that I'm comfortable with. So we don't overeat before a race or a Century, and we don't undereat, and we don't change our diet. I mean, if we're used to eating, you know, our regular foods or whatever, and then the day before the race comes and all of a sudden we pack in a pound of spaghetti or more, you know, those carbohydrates, for a lot of us, if that's not a regular part of our eating diet, is very difficult to digest and will actually hinder you on the actual event. And then the other thing is that it might hinder you on your sleep as well. If our bellies are full and we get gas, you know, or heartburn. You know, it's really hard to sleep if we're not used to or acclimated to the diet. Professionals, you know, they do this so frequently, and they have a certain dietary need, and part of that need is complex carbohydrates. They eat this on a regular basis. I mean, these guys are training, you know, 50, 100 miles a day, and at the end of each day, they have a very consistent meal, you know, with high carbs, spaghetti or whatever. But you and me, I mean, if we're, you know, riding, you know, 4 days a week, 3 days a week, 30 miles a day, we don't have the same nutritional requirements, and we have a probably different meal to, you know, sustain our activity. And so what we do is make sure we eat the same diet before a race that we would normally eat, or before the event. No more, no less.
And then during the event?
Well, I'd always eat a good breakfast before the ride. Again, nothing that's too heavy. You don't want to feel full. You want to feel fulfilled.
Okay.
And then during the ride, you know, sometimes you're at the mercy of the ride promoter and what they set up for you at the stations. And a lot of stations I found have mostly sweets. You know, oranges, bananas. I mean, it's all healthy, good stuff, but it's all sweet. And sometimes you might find a few pretzels. And then some of them might have water or a power drink. And what I'm wary of is basically just taking on too much complex carbos through the ride, eating all the cookies and, you know, fruits and stuff like that. One thing, the fruits, if you're not, again, if it's not something you eat a ton of, you know, high fiber can be, at the end of the ride, it might be a little uncomfortable. So, you know, just eat as much fruit as probably as what you would normally eat, and then maybe a cookie or two at a stop, but, you know, don't fill up on the foods that they give you there. And what I do is I pack my own food, my own nutrition. And what I like to pack is I like to keep 1 bottle of water and 1 bottle of a power drink, something that'll replace the electrolytes. So making sure it's high in electrolyte or sodium, because when we're sweating, we're losing all of our electrolytes, and if we're just replacing salt water with water, then we have an imbalance. And so what happens is our cells aren't able to actually absorb the water that we drink when there's no sodium. And when this happens, this is when we start cramping, or we just get very fatigued or dehydrated, even though we're drinking a ton of water. So we need to make sure that we're replacing electrolytes. That's key. So a power drink, and I also pack a set of these goo or gel blasts. All right, Goo makes them, Power Bar makes them. It's basically like a gumdrop that you can just throw in your back jersey and take a couple every, 30 minutes.
Okay.
And that'll help keep the electrolytes balanced. Yeah, because when you run out of sodium, it doesn't matter how many cookies or bananas you eat, that's not going to put it back. So you gotta be real careful. And then if you're trying to fill up, if you're trying to make up that deficiency with cookies, what we wind up doing is eating too many complex carbs, and then that just sits in our gut. And because we're dehydrated, we can't digest it. So that gets real uncomfortable real fast too. Nice easy draft here. Easy gear. Letting our heart rate come down to the mid 70s.
Now you say you use 2 water bottles. What's your take on
Or more.
the platypus, or the water bag? 'Cause I know
Oh, the like the backpack?
Yeah.
Yeah, those aren't bad. I mean, I don't like carrying them, but I mean they're good because it makes it easy to stay hydrated. As long as you have something else to help replace the sodium. If you drink too much water while you're sweating, then that can actually be a disadvantage.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I just don't like the taste of the water out of those things. So I usually just carry bottles, and every 25 miles where they throw on a rest stop, I fill up with water. And most Sentries have some sort of Powerade, Gatorade, or something that you can put in your bottle. Here we are behind him again, taking off resistance.
Because I switch to a water bag plus my water bottles because I don't know if it's my conditioning or just my size. I
use a lot.
I sweat a lot, and then I cramp. And I found if I had more water, I didn't cramp as bad.
Yeah. Well, if you're hydrated, Mike, you won't cramp.
Okay.
The thing is staying hydrated on a ride is critical. Now, if the ride is to an extent where you've basically depleted your body of sodium, and that can take a long time to do. I mean, if your breakfast was a McDonald's sausage McMuffin or something, I mean, those things are loaded with salt. That'll take a while to perspire out. And so, I mean, you may be actually helping your system become more balanced as you're sweating that out and drinking lots of water. But eventually, you'll sweat all your sodium out, and then it doesn't matter how much water you drink, you're going to cramp up. So when your body is no longer at equilibrium sodium water content, then you'll start cramping. As a matter of fact, this ride, I did something wrong, and I'm not sure what it was, but I was cramping like crazy. Colorado is a really dry state, so we lose water very quickly. And if it starts getting warm, it goes even faster. And this ride was actually pretty hot. It was about 90 degrees at 9,500 feet. And so I lost a lot of fluids, even though I was taking it on, eating my goos, and I still cramped up. Taking a break here behind our draft, letting our heart rate settle back in. So I was trying to eat salt. I went through all my goo. I think that was my biggest problem, because I didn't pack enough. But I was trying to eat these little fish crackers that they had at the stops to replace the salt, but I could barely chew them up because my mouth was so dry. So I had a really tough time maintaining a balance on this ride. Oops, what happened to my mic?
You unplugged yourself.
Did I? No.
Turn it off.
Test? How's that?
Yeah, I can hear you.
And back into heavier gear. Yeah. And I'm taking a pull here. Yeah, it's a balancing act a lot of the time, you know. And every ride is a little bit different. And it's just important to try to be as prepared as possible. You know. That's about all I can say with that. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And your body is dynamic, and so is the ride itself. And we can't always predict how we're going to respond to the event. We're taking a long pull here, getting the heart rate up. And get on the wheel, take some resistance off. Actually, yeah, we had a really strong headwind here. And so it was real tough in the wind. You can see that the guy in front of us, he's packed for success. I mean, he's got the water container on his back and who knows what in his jersey. Food, tires, tubes.
Yeah, because the one thing, you know, getting into road biking, it seems like there's a couple different camps. You got the naturalists who, you know, shave, you know, nothing extra, lightest bike. You know, they're the professional wannabe or are former professionals. And then you have, I found more guys like me who have a decent setup. Maybe it's not top of the line, but you know, I have some decent components on my bike. It's a light bike, and I riding through, but I'm not afraid to not look so professional, but feel comfortable and have enough water to ride.
We're going to take it easy through this town here. Nice, easy gear, coasting, soft pedaling. Let's get the heart rate down. And add some resistance, and let's just keep charging on. A little heavier gear. Get the heart rate back up.
This must be a climb.
I just found out that Alexi Graywall lives in Loveland, Colorado. I know. If you weren't a cyclist in the 80s, that name doesn't ring a bell, but he was a Olympic gold medalist in, I don't know, 85 or 6, something like that. Big ring up front. We're gonna climb up this hill. So let's add some resistance, bringing our cadence down a little bit. And grind up over the top here.
And don't know if you know this, but Jeannie Longo hangs out in Boulder.
Alright, thanks.
And she actually comes down and did a lot of the time trials and stuff this summer at Bear Creek.
Okay, I don't know who she is.
The Italian racing cyclist.
Oh wow. And dropping the resistance down a little bit. Coast down the hill.
Now, just even on this spinner, I can tell I haven't been on a bike in a while. What is your advice as far as getting used to the saddle? I mean, I bought a seat, had it fitted, and it's made a world of difference, but like I said, I can tell it's winter time and I haven't been riding this that much. What are your tips and tricks to get used to the saddle, or be able to, you know, if you're doing a century ride, do you know, buy extra padded shorts? Do you use the what is that, chafing butter stuff?
Chamois butter?
Yeah, chamois butter. All the above.
Well, actually, yeah. Well, if you're chronically uncomfortable and you're on your bike, I mean, it could come down to how the bike is fit. You know, your saddle may be too high, and if your hips are rocking back and forth, and you feel your seat bones rocking, you know, you had that problem at first.
Yeah.
That can get real uncomfortable real fast, so I think you're well aware.
Yes, I am.
So you really need to make sure that your bike is fit, and then test it out and evaluate your body mechanics on the bike, and then fine-tune those adjustments as you're getting into the ride. Whether the saddle is too far back or too far forward, that'll make a huge change, because it changes the area where your butt is hitting the saddle. And the thing is, you want to try and have as much area contacting your rear as possible. You don't want a pressure point in one small area, and that gets real uncomfortable. And you can sometimes vary that with your fore and aft position, how far your saddle is forward and how big your reach is. And then also how level your saddle is. If you're tilting your saddle up, you know, you're putting more pressure in one place, and maybe your tailbone, or if your saddle's too far forward, tilt it down, then you're probably putting too much pressure in the groin So I mean, they're built so you have them perfectly level, and you might adjust those parameters because they're available, just because everybody's different. So you might want to try tilting your saddle and adjusting it. And if all that fails and you're still uncomfortable, you know, it's not just a comfort curve. I mean, if you can't get comfortable, then it's time to look for a new saddle.
Do you feel that it's worth the expense to go to your local bike shop and be fitted on your bike properly or professionally?
It depends on the bike shop. You know, make sure they have a fit system in place and they're not just fitting you so they can sell you a bike.
Right.
You know, some shops have a professional fit system set up. We're coasting here. So soft pedal or coast. So yeah, some bike shops are set up, and yeah, if you don't have the expertise or a friend who can fit you, then yeah, I'd definitely spend the money and get it done.
Okay.
But,
I know I see a lot of guys, and I mean, I'm not sure what I look like when I ride, but I know you've helped me get fitted on this bike, and it's made a world of difference. And I see guys out there riding, and they can't fit on that bike, and it just looks painful to me, and I just want to tell them to go get fitted or adjust a little bit.
Oh, I've wanted to say that too. Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of a underappreciated part of cycling, I guess. When you're buying a bike, I mean, some people will either look for the money aspect of it, and they don't want to spend a lot of money, or they're looking for the prestige of the bike, you know, wanting to get the fanciest stuff and, you know, most expensive saddle and
everybody wants the Tour de France winner rode.
But you know, those bikes may not be built for them, and they've just invested, you know, $3 to $5 grand in a bike, and they're uncomfortable and painful and in pain, and performance suffers, and you know, their bike looks cool, but they look goofy on it.
Yeah, I think I'm not afraid to look I'm not afraid to look goofy as long as I'm getting a good ride in.
Well, I think for the most part the cycling community is very helpful when it comes to encouraging people who are just starting out. And I think that most criticism that you'll get if you're riding would be constructive, you know, especially if, you know, you're a new rider. And you know, when you get to the stage where you've been doing this for 10 years and you see somebody who looks uncomfortable, and you might not be embarrassed to share that with them. Yeah. And it's not a bad thing. But I mean, you know, it's not about really the looks, it's about whether, you know, somebody is doing something right or not. And you know, I'll often tell people if they're doing something wrong, especially if it's an issue of I'm brain farting on the word. Sorry, I get tired and my brain stops working. But if, you know, if they're doing something wrong that's inconsiderate, then I'll definitely let them know. Yeah.
Speaking of inconsiderate, how do you handle, I mean, I've only been on 3 organized road rides, but my wife and I have done several family style rides, you know, that are less in distance, more for, you know, kids and husband-wife type thing, nothing real strenuous. But there's always somebody, no matter what, if you have a bike lane or a shoulder to ride on, they feel it's their right to ride in the middle of the street.
You mean the cyclist?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you're in a group ride, there's a lot of group ride mentality, and if you don't have a strong ride leader, and the group will sometimes get all over the place, and I've seen groups cross over yellow lines and, you know, and getting over competitive or making passes where, you know, it's not safe to do so. So I mean, you get into that group ride mentality, and it can get real dangerous real fast. And it's up to the individual to make sure that they, you know, ride responsibly. And then, you know, no, I don't pull any punches if somebody is doing something stupid. I'll tell them to, you know, follow the rules or get off the ride. You know, I don't want somebody crashing out and taking 10 people behind them with them.
Plus, being new to this, I think you and I have talked about this, but you have those people that you're a cyclist, that's cool. Then you have the others, you're a cyclist. Oh, you guys are on the road, you're the ones I want to run over. And then you get on these rides and you see the guys out there when there's obviously an area that the bike will fit in, like a real wide shoulder. Or when we're riding in town, especially in Denver, which has a lot of designated bike lanes on the street, you know, I tell them to get in the lane, but and they're sort of giving all of us a bad name.
Yeah, well, you know.
And having a friend that was killed riding, you know, I try to encourage them to ride within the rules and within the street, but one, because it's safer for them, but also it gives us a better name as a cycling community.
Well, I think as a cyclist you have to make the safest choice, you know, and sometimes the bike lane might not be the safest choice.
Right.
And it really, you know, what you're doing and what choices you're making is dictated by your environment. You know, if you've got glass and road debris in the bike lane, which is usually where that stuff ends up, then bike lane's not the best place to be.
Right.
You know, if you've got, I'm just going to name a few examples of where I think the rules should be broken. But, you know, for the most part, I think you shouldn't break the rules. But, I mean, for example, let's say you've got a stop sign and you're in traffic. You're in bumper-to-bumper traffic. There's a car behind you, car in front of you, and there's a stop sign. Do you take your turn behind the car? You know, what do you think is the best choice there? I'm going to ask you, Mike.
I usually get behind the car.
Okay. See, a lot of injuries occur as a result of bikes being rear-ended by the car behind them coming to a stop at a stop sign, especially in high traffic. If you've got room on the right, your safest bet is to ride to the right of the car and coast alongside them, making sure that they're not turning right or left at that stop sign. And instead of coming to a stop, accelerate with the car. Come off the line with the car. The car will run interference against cross traffic for you, so that a person who's turning left doesn't hit you. You know, might hit the car, but not you.
Right.
You know, but that's in a high traffic situation. If you're on a rural road, I'm not paying attention to the video. We're at an 8 out of 10. We're really cranking it up here. 7, 6, coming up over the hill. If you're on a rural road and there's a stop sign, yeah, slow down, come to a rolling stop, take a look for traffic around you, and keep going. If you're in a more popular area, busier area, and there's nobody in front of you, definitely come to a full stop at the stop sign, and then roll on and make sure it's clear. You don't want. One thing I don't like to do is let cars wave me through an intersection. Always come to a stop at an intersection if there's cars waiting to go. But like I said, there's so much variety, and really you're trying to make the best choices to protect your life and protect your body from injury. And cars and motorists, or motorists and bikes, the bike always gets the short end of the stick. And I think a lot of people that are driving who are not cyclists, they just don't understand that a lot of the things that we do, we're just trying to keep ourselves safe. And it may inconvenience the driver behind you, but I think that's a small price to pay.
Yeah.
One of the things I think I explained to you is when we were climbing up Deer Creek Canyon and there's no shoulder, how far to the right should you stay in order to be safe from cars that are passing you?
And that's not right on the right or the white, but a little bit inside of it.
Yeah, I usually ride about 4 feet, 1 meter from the edge of the road. And what you want to do is, the motorists who are behind you, it's in their nature to try to pass you while inside the yellow line. We're at the rest stop here, by the way.
Okay.
So if you guys want to pause your video and hop off and stretch out, it's a good place to do it. Otherwise, we're just going to cut and continue.
Wow.
Okay, we're rolling out. We got the rear cam fired up here. So we've got a short little way, and then we have the next climb. It's not too bad a climb.
I'm gonna sleep good tonight.
So I guess just to finish up the previous topic or conversation,
Metro Denver.
how far to the right should you ride? And I usually give myself 4 feet to a meter so that people will actually commit to crossing over the yellow line to pass you instead of trying to pass you while inside the lane. They'll clip you with a mirror. Had people get clipped frequently with a mirror. Somebody's trying to stay inside the lane, and if you don't give them incentive to drive outside the lane, then they're going to try to come as close to you as possible, and while staying in their lane.
And from experience,
dangerous.
mirrors hurt.
Yes, they do.
Time is like a surfboard thing. It's like you stand up on the surfboard without a paddle. Yeah, it's hard.
Now on a ride, or one of the things I find that, you know, road biking, as with any hobby or lifestyle, can be as expensive as you want to make it. But one of the things I struggle the most with is I'm not very handy with tools when it comes to bikes and stuff like that. I'm good with wood, but not bikes. On a ride, what should you have? What is the minimum equipment you should take with you? And is there, if it's an organized ride, do you expect certain type of assistance?
Okay. Well, first thing, big ring up front. We're on our climb. Let's start mashing down on those pedals. This is a pretty steep little section, and it gets a little steeper from here. And we're going to let our heart rates come up to 81% or more. Well, you know, your survival pack, for the most part, should be able to fit into a seat bag, which includes a toolkit that usually has a set of Allen wrenches, a set of tire irons, and a chain breaker, plus an inflation system. Okay, coming back down. A pump or CO2, an extra tube, inner tube. You know, all this stuff should be able to fit in your pack under your saddle. That's the minimum.
That's good, because that's what I have
good.
for minimum.
Patch kits, you know. And you always, if you're riding out, especially out here in Colorado, where there's so much road that is so far from civilization, you don't want to get caught with a flat tire that you can't fix, or a broken chain. Another good thing to have is maybe the spoke wrench. Those are pretty small. If you got a broken spoke, well, you take out the bad spoke and true up your wheel as best as possible so that it doesn't rub the brakes and finish the ride. That's a good tool. Most bike shops are happy to help teach you how to use the tool or show you how to fix a flat. I think there are certain skills you need to be able to do on your own. You know, if you're in a group, you know, hopefully somebody has a tube if you don't have one, but I mean, usually the camaraderie on the road dictates that you help people out who don't have the equipment. You know, what comes around goes around.
Yeah, I can change my own tube now. I've been practicing. It took me an hour to change my first one. A road bike's much different beast than the mountain bike.
Climbing again. Here we go. Yeah.
Indoor training videos. So I contacted the promoter of this century.
It's just teasing us to climb here. You can see the road veering up just ahead of us. Little pre-teasers. Oh, we actually had a coming right up here. The guy in front of us, he got a blowout, and I think it was because of it was so hot. There's a big ring up front. Feeling the hill on your legs. Crank up it. Adding some more resistance. Let the heart rate slowly come up to 81, 84%. We were lucky here, he got a flat. They fixed the tire, but the sag wagon had a pump. That was handy. 9 out of 10 on the resistance. The hill is getting steeper. Look at the cadence. 60. We're trying to do two things. Keep our heart rate under control and not cramp.
Cramping again, huh?
9 out of 10. Slow up there, Mike. That trainer has totally different resistance. Mike's putting out about 700 watts. Watch the cadence. We're nice low cadence here. Keeping our heart rate under control. 43 RPM. Watch my legs. 43. Slow it up. .50 is a little less than 1 turn per second.
Oh shit.
There's our flat tire.
What'd you get?
Yeah, you may have the tools in your pack, but it may not mean much if you don't know how to use them. There's books and bike shops. They're all very good to help. And just learn the basics. I would learn the basics. How to adjust your derailleurs. That's a basic skill. You know, what tension the cable should be at. It's hard to explain, but you know, it's easier to show. If your cable, when you have you want to put your bike in its lowest gear, so drop your front ring or drop the chain on your front gear to its smallest ring, and then put the chain on your back gear in its smallest ring, so the back cog is in the smallest ring. And you can look at the tension of the cables going from your shifters to each derailleur. And if they don't pluck like a loose guitar string, then they're too loose. Okay. If you can hear them and they go doing, they're too tight. So they should be right in between, being so loose that there's play in it, and so tight that it's actually pulling on the derailleur spring. Nice descent here, so we can let it up here, soft pedal or coast down the hill, get our heart rate under control, let it drop down into the 70s. And of course, changing your tire is it's like learning how to walk. Practice the 1 minute tire change. Or
NASCAR pit crew.
Yeah. One of the things I do is I also have a pocket knife with a pair of scissors, and I always keep, you know, if you have a blowout. Here we got another hill here. Sorry about that. So add some resistance. 7 out of 10. We're actually going to climb this nice and slow. So we're not going to hit it too hard. Just feel the resistance in your legs. Keep the cadence around 55. Should be good. So if you have a blowout, you're obviously not going to leave your bad tube on the road and litter. You're going to shove it in your jersey. And that tube can actually turn into a nice patch. Let's say you have let's say your tire for some reason gets a crack in it, or a hole in your tire, and your inner tube that's in there wants to blow out through those holes. You can use your old tube to patch up the tire.
Looks like a team riding by us.
Yeah, we actually pass them later on. I think they're a club. Oh, we're letting that guy we're riding with catch back on. He just dropped a chain. So we're gonna take it slow until he's back on our wheel. On a Century, I always carry a bike pump and not just CO2. You can only pack a couple of CO2s, so you know, if you get one too many flats for some reason and you don't have any more air, kind of screwed. So pack a pump and just sit on the side of the road and hand pump if you have to.
If I find though with the pumps, yeah, you can only get so many pounds in them.
Yeah, no, well, you know, some is better than none.
Yeah, I've made it home that way. Stopping and pumping about every 5 miles just to make sure I had enough pressure.
Now we can see him coming up behind us here in the rear view cam. Add some resistance because we're going to start picking it up a little bit. So big ring up front. 7 out of 10. And then let the heart rate come right back up again into the mid 80s. Eight out of 10. Take a little off. Staying in the saddle, using the big muscles in your legs and hips and butt to drive you up the top. And this is the last climb. The rest of the way is downhill. This was one of the few rides where I almost gave up on, but I didn't. Now he's cramping a lot, and it's actually sporting an ear infection. And so my ears weren't popping, and I get a headache. And I think back on the ride fondly, surprisingly.
Yeah, it looks like it's a beautiful ride.
It is gorgeous. Really nice people, and the barbecue at the end of the ride was wonderful. Okay, big heavy gear here. It's our last surge to the top. Let's get out of the saddle and climb it. and back down, and start taking off some resistance. And the rest of this is nice and fun. Let it drop down. We're gonna coast for a while here.
Okay.
Let our heart rate come down. Soft pedal.
How do you overcome that?
What? Lack of motivation?
Yeah. I mean, because for me, well, you know, I'm not a good climber. And
very few of us are.
Yeah, but you know, I push and I push, and then there's times where, you know, I'm not sure if I'm going to make it. And my first couple rides, I didn't make it. But I have made every hill since, except for a couple where I just cramped up so bad I'm physically unable to. But what motivates you? What makes you continue on?
Move your bike a little bit in front.
I think it's got dead on me.
What's that?
Can you hear?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good. That's better.
It must have slipped on me.
That's all right. So yeah, the question is, what keeps me motivated? Well, there's a couple things. I mean, I think first and foremost, it's ego. You know, I don't want to succumb to getting into the sag wagon. And I think even on some of the really steep climbs where I feel like I'm going to die, you know, I've been close to 100% of my max and turning the cranks at about 30 RPM. I think that Mile of Hell video was one of them. And it's just a refusal to. It's a refusal to let myself quit. You know, I don't want to. I guess I'm probably harder on myself than other people. I don't want to think of myself as a failure. And I think anytime I walk my bike up a hill or get in a car and call it a day, that's how I feel about myself. And so, yeah, it's not to say that that's what you are, but I think that, you know, being hard on myself is what motivates me to keep going. You know, everybody is different. And then there's an intellectual side of it. And I know that all I have to do is keep the pedals turning. You know, one crank, one leg over the other, one rotation after another. And I know if I just keep doing that, I'm going to get to the end of the ride eventually. And you know, so I'll have that to go on. That'll keep me going. And then there's the, I guess, the Buddha Zen aspect, you know, where I'm trying to almost meditate on the issue, and what I'll do is I'll detach my head from the rest of my body. And I'll think of it as though my head is the passenger and my body is the vehicle. And it's kind of like, you know, the vehicle is suffering, but the head is fine, you know, and I can just keep, you know, sending commands to my legs, and they'll keep doing what I tell them to do. So, you know, those are my own techniques.
And then,
what gets you up a hill?
It's sort of the same thing. It's just, for me, it's not wanting to quit, proving to myself really that I can do it. And yeah, I talk to myself a lot, so I'm sure people think I'm crazy at the hill. But you know, because like I said, I'm new to this, and for me to be able to do a hill that I think is something that I couldn't do previously, when I get to the top, it gives me a feeling that euphoria, so to speak, that I've accomplished something. But living here in Colorado, what kind of training techniques can you do to help you? I mean, besides, or is it riding Lookout Mountain, you know, 3 times a week, or just to get used to riding those type of hills?
Well, as Tim said, you know, you just you got to do it. You know, if you want to be a better climber, you have to climb. As Michael said, you know, to be a more efficient climber, you have to lose weight. Yeah, it's a gravity sport.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're, I guess there's two aspects of climbing. I mean, there's climbing to be a fast climber, not getting past and winning a hill ending event or whatever, a hill stage. You know, or even if you're just on a century like this and you want to keep from being passed a lot, you know. Yeah, you gotta lose weight. You gotta get lighter. You know, I think a lot of us are so focused on our bikes that we forget about our bodies, because we can lose a lot more weight in our body than we can ever shave off our bike, for the most of us. Maybe a couple climbers out there going, "Oh, brother." And then there's the just climbing for the enjoyment of the sport of cycling. I mean, sometimes the sport of cycling throws a hill at us, and we just need to get over the top of it. And I think that's a whole different training aspect to climbing. And I think that, you know, one, you have to do it, you have to practice. But also I think you can't throw yourself into a climb. You know, and I think you were guilty of this. You know, when the climb starts, you know, you just all of a sudden raising your effort levels suddenly,
Right.
so that you're in the red zone. Boom. You know, you see that hill and you're like, okay, I'm going to get up this sucker, and you start, you know, bearing down on the pedals, and you start trying to get up to the top as fast as you can, and you're not looking so much at how quickly your effort is escalating from green zone to red. And so it's real important that you take a good 10 minutes to warm up to your climbing heart rate. And I think, you know, 88% of max on a long, hard climb should be about as hard as you should be going. Any harder than that and you'll blow up before you get to the top. But take a long time to get to that 88%. Let it slowly build up. You know, your muscles, your heart rate responds at a different rate than your legs. And when you throw a lot of energy in, all of a sudden your heart rate will just spike, and you'll be in the red 95-98% of max. And once you hit that, once you're in that red zone, it's really hard to finish a ride. So, you know, turtle in the hair, I guess, you know, just pace yourself nice and slow. And then you can even stair step, you know, so you're starting a hill out and you're actually going to go much easier than you intend. And you let your heart rate go up to, you know, 80%. And you hold it there. And you say, okay, if I sustain this same effort level all the way to the top, then I'll stay at about 80%. But it'll be slow going. Add a little bit more power and speed, and let your heart rate go up to 84%. It doesn't take a lot. Usually just very small increments of effort, and your heart rate starts making huge changes. So that's my suggestion. We got a little hill here. It's actually going to be kind of steep.
Okay.
Big ring up front.
Maybe.
8 out of 10. Nine out of 10. Cadence at 54, 60. Almost up. Drop a chain. And slowly taking off the resistance. Come over the top. Small ring up front. And let's just coast down this. Drop your chain.
Yep. Which gets to the previous discussion about those little, knowing how to adjust the derailleurs. I think you need some micro adjustments still.
Well, trainers are a lot different than on the road. Your bike will perform perfectly on the road. You put on a trainer and it doesn't perform as well. There's the trainers just I think where their resistance is much more. I guess the resistance is continuous. You're never actually coasting. And so when you apply a bigger ring or something, then all of a sudden your resistance jumps into a really high number all of a sudden, and it just throws your chain sometimes.
Yeah, that's what I did there. Tried to jump up to the top ring too fast. They didn't like it.
Yeah, you gotta usually I'll take some pressure off the pedals when I'm shifting into a big ring, and then slowly grind it and put it in that big ring, and then start hammering up the hill. So I'll drop a chain too if I don't do that. Here's another little hill coming up, and we're just going to add resistance on our back, just by clicking up to about a 7 out of 10. We're not going to use our big ring, I don't think. Now let's just keep our cadence just under 80, and I'll grind up here. And take a little off. Keeping legs going. And we got a little group of people coming up behind us. I'm enjoying the view in front of me here. It's flat downhill. Now I guess preparing for a Century World ride, one of the questions that a lot of us don't ask ourselves the day of the ride is, should I actually ride it? And I think what I mean by that is the weather, and are you prepared? I'm taken back to one of the rides I did a few years ago, and when I got there, it was freezing. It was like cold. It was like a rain and a hail all in the same thing. The cloud had been raining all night, and the clouds were thick and black, and there didn't seem to be any sign of it letting up. Now, this ride, mind you, took place in the middle of summer, so most of the people who were there were packed for a summer ride, shorts and we were all getting ready to do this thing, and I'm like standing out there, thinking, wow, this is pretty cold and it's wet, and I'm looking at the route that the ride took, which was actually along several fairly busy California highways on the shoulder, and I'm thinking to myself, is this going to be safe? With traffic, thinking about traffic, hypothermia, my own safety. And so I actually did the hardest thing that I think it is to do for a cyclist, and that's to abandon the ride. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. And I got in the van, and I thought, well, maybe I'll just wait here for an hour or two and see what happens to the weather. And if it clears up, I'll go. And it never did. But people were, people still left. And they were riding in, they were using garbage bags over their bodies to stay dry. But my biggest thing was, it was pouring, and it was hard to see the road when you're a driver. And there were cyclists all on the road. And I just, I thought that was, I think that a lot of people just stop using their good judgment because they feel like there's a pressure to do it. Once you're committed to the ride and you're doing it, then your choices are a little bit different. But
right. Well, that's one thing with the ragby ride. They tell you to prepare for all, because it's the middle of July in Iowa.
Right.
And you get everything from tornadic winds and rainstorms to 100 degrees with 99% humidity. So, and the blog from not this past year but the year before, it pretty much rained the whole week. So everybody rode in, like you were just describing, trash bags and rain gear. But they tell people to pack for everything. And since it's a multi-day ride, they actually have a swag wagon that will carry your gear, so you're not always carrying it on your body.
Yeah, if there's that kind of support, then you have options during the ride to abandon it or get in a van or whatever.
Yeah.
But a lot of the centuries, you're on your own for 25 miles with the possibility of a sag wagon coming up behind you and bailing you out if you need to. Being prepared to do something like that, sometimes it just doesn't matter,
Right. Well, that's, I think, as I'm discovering today, I haven't been riding a lot just because I'm sort of a fair weather. Come about October, everything gets put away and I start working out inside, but it's a different technique, different experience.
Yeah. We're in a good pace line here, keeping our heart rate in the mid-80s, just staying on a wheel, taking advantage of the draft to get us to the finish line a little quicker. Sometimes a pace line like this, it'll help and sometimes it'll hurt. If your pace line is too fast, then you probably should just get out and ride your own pace. But we're closing into the end of the ride, so it's okay to put in a little extra effort.
Finish line is just in sight.
Yeah, finish strong. You see her left shoe, how it's angled.
Yeah.
That's just a cleat adjustment. It'd be real simple for her to fix. That's hard on the knees. I guess a checklist for some things that you should bring on a century. I would definitely make up a checklist the day before the ride or a couple days so you're not forgetting things. Sometimes the anxiety and the excitement from a century, you just forget things. So make up a checklist, and some of the things to include would be obviously the tools we talked about, The food we talked about. Some extra clothing. A windbreaker, rain gear, jacket, and maybe pants. Something that's small enough you can roll up and shove in your jersey.
Leg warmers or arm warmers?
That helps.
Just as good, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, any little thing can help if it gets cold or rainy. Really depends where you're riding. I mean, I always bring everything to every ride. And then the day of the ride, I look out, stick my finger in the air, and decide what to pack in my jersey. Yeah. I've been right and I've been wrong. I mean, my second, let's see. Yeah, my second triple bypass. We got up to the Squaw Pass, and it was snowing. And it was raining up to about 10,000 feet, and then it turned to snow. So I was drenched, but I had my rain gear. It just wasn't enough. And when I got down to Idaho Springs, me and almost everybody else I was riding with turned hypothermic. And I think half the ride called it quits there, including myself. Went home. So close. And then cell phone, wallet, identification, money. Always good things to have.
An identification. You mean like license or road ID or both?
Yeah, one or the other or both. I have both. Oh, real important when you do your sentry, bring some tissues. Some toilet paper or wet wipes or something.
Okay.
Those porta potties often run out of TP.
Things you never thought of.
Yeah, especially when there's 5,000 people. Our big ring up front here. 7 out of 10 on resistance. We got the pull here, and we got a group behind us, and we're trying to keep this pace line moving. Heart rate's at 86%. Okay, now we're going to let ourselves get past, so drop it in your small ring. And take a wheel.
For heart rate, is there a good reference or even a website that you can go out and sort of get your idea of what your
Max?
min, max, average heart rate for age should be, or give you a ballpark at least?
Well, I don't use that. I mean, age and heart rate, if you're an athlete, that's bunk. I guess the standard is 220 minus your age is your max heart rate.
Okay.
But that would mean that my max should be about 176. You guys do the math. But my max heart rate is 195.
Wow.
And so, you know, your body is different from other people's bodies, and your heart is a different size, and there's no one size fits all. And then the biggest thing too is your conditioning. If you're fitter and you're training your max heart rate frequently, your max heart rate will be much higher than people who don't. If you're a couch potato and you don't get any exercise in whatsoever, then your max heart rate is probably much lower than it should be. So you don't want to use that rule of thumb, not for your training.
Okay.
Finding your maximum heart rate that can be done professionally. You know, go see a doctor, and they'll give you a stress test, and they'll determine your max heart rate. They can determine your VO2 max, your lactic threshold. Now, if you want to do it yourself, really your max heart rate is just a heart rate that you can't exceed. If you're racing a crit or something, and then the last 30 seconds you're full out sprint as hard as you can, everything you got, you know, what you end up with as your highest heart rate is probably pretty close to your max.
Okay.
And then, but you know, max heart rates also can vary by activity. So your maximum heart rate when you're swimming is much different from your max heart rate when you're riding a bike or running. Your maximum heart rate when you're running is actually going to probably be higher than your max heart rate when you're cycling. So it's good to, you know, test your heart rates. And when you've discovered what your max heart rate is, your percent of max is just your current heart rate divided by your maximum heart rate. And that'll give you your 84% or whatever. A lot of heart rate monitors have that feature built in. And you can just look down at your heart rate monitor and tell you what percent of max you're at.
Okay.
You also need to recalculate your maximum heart rate every few months or so, because it'll change.
Okay.
So
it's good to know. I need to do that.
yeah,
Because right now I always assume my max heart rate's about 172.
yeah,
Because, well, haven't exceeded that on a spin bike yet.
okay,
But I have gotten higher than that on an outside climb.
right. Oh yeah, your max heart rate outdoors is probably different from your max indoors. So
Yeah.
I always, you know, when I'm on my indoor trainer, I take off about 5 beats per minute to determine, you know, my max, because it's different inside than outside. I can usually ride at a much higher level outside than inside.
Yeah, need to know that, because one of the things I am doing by buying the trainer and the videos is that I'm trying to be more consistent with my workouts year-round versus just riding, as I say, in the fair weather.
Right.
Because when I'm riding in the summer, spring, summer, and fall, I'm able to maintain my weight and keep it under 250.
You know, where you want. Okay.
Where I want it to be. Whereas like right now in the winter, you know, I put 20 on, and so I need to exercise more, and of course, yeah, everything.
Yeah.
I know diet plays into it too, but
Oh yeah. Well, yeah.
I ride to keep my weight down so that I can enjoy the food and beer that I enjoy. Being a home brewer,
Yeah.
you know, I like to drink some beer. So get all this riding in.
Yeah. Ride to eat.
Ride to eat and drink.
You know, I think that actually the winters can be a better opportunity to lose weight than in the summer. Yeah. And I think that, well, for me, you know, since there's more indoor cycling, you can really control what you're doing more.
Yeah.
You can say, okay, on Monday I'm going to do a high calorie burning workout. On Wednesday I'm going to do a lactic threshold workout. You know, on Friday I'm going to do a red zone workout, and I'm going to recover on day X and day Y, and I'm going to start the sequence over again next week.
Yeah, because inside, when you train indoor, there's no weather to
Right.
stop you.
So you can really set up your training program with much more discipline, I guess. And then also, you know, you might even think more about cross training in the wintertime. You said you were going to the gym.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can say on day X and day Y, I'm going to the gym. And day you know, Q and Z, I'm gonna ride my bike or whatever.
Yeah, for me, not having small kids at home,
Yeah.
I go to the gym 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I do spinning Monday, Wednesday, Friday in a class, and then currently I'm doing a CrossFit kettlebell class Tuesday and Thursday. But by having the trainer, I'll be able to go home instead of sitting on the couch and vegging, just get on the bike and do a workout, or just get on the bike and spin while I'm watching what I normally do, just to stay more active.
Well, hey, Mike, this ride is actually coming to an end here.
We did it.
Yeah, we did it. And thank you very much for coming out and helping.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, so, you know, don't lose hope in the winter. You know, you can actually use it to lose weight, and actually, you know, usually when I start out in the summer, I'm actually in better shape than when I start out in the winter.
Well, that's my goal this year.
Well, thanks again, Mike.
Thank you.
This ride is over, and thank you very much for doing the tour with me. And have a great time. This is Big Bop signing out.
You just get on Yampa. Well, maybe I'll see you there. I'll probably take a nap.